Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We're very excited because today is our last UHN Summer Training and Research Program learning session for this season. And we're excited to have a wonderful discussion about resumes and cover letters. For any of you who don't know, my name is Amanda Very, and I'm the lead of the Office of Research Trainees, or ORT, and I'm joined here by our coordinator, Jordan Beck. So before we go any further, I want to acknowledge the land on which UHN operates. There's been a UHN hospital on this land since 1829. For thousands of years, it has been the tradition of nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. This land is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work here. So I'd like to take this opportunity to ask you to join me in taking a moment to reflect on the land that you're currently on. On the side here, we have a QR code that you can scan for more resources. If you're not sure, we know a lot of you are tuning in from different places and around anywhere. If you're not sure what your land information is, you can text your city and province to the number below. And I just want to reflect on how grateful we are to be on this land and have all of the opportunities it's given us, including this summer research program. Thank you. So before we get started in on this session, I want to take a second to do the attendance. So for any UHN summer research students that are aiming to get their certificate program completion, please take a couple of moments and complete the attendance form on the screen. Jordan will also be putting it into the chat now, and he'll continue to do that through the session just in case anybody misses it. So take a moment to do that. This is our last session. As a reminder, you have to complete or attend or watch 4 sessions in order to get the certificate of program completion. If you haven't been able to watch enough sessions yet, don't worry. We'll send out all of the recordings and a form for you to confirm that you've watched those sessions tomorrow in our email. So you still have a chance to get that certificate of program completion. And the last thing I just want to mention is that we really hope that you've been enjoying the summer learning sessions that we've been hosting. If you're a summer student at UHN, and if you're aiming to receive that certificate of program completion, you have until tonight to submit your presentations on VoiceThread. So that'll be open until 5 p.m. and you should have received all of the information if you've registered already. Your presentations will be judged by a panel of graduate students, postdocs, and staff, and we'll be able to pick the best presentations of all the presentations that you submit. And those individuals will win a prize and also will be invited to present at our in-person research and networking day on August 10th. And that will be at Toronto Rehab, and we'll send lots more information about that for you to find out. Now, even if you are not receiving a prize and you can't present live, we really hope that you'll all consider joining us because you'll get to hear lots of cool research that's happening at UHN. I'm loving watching all the videos right now because I'm learning so many cool things. Research at UHN is so diverse and so exciting. But you'll also be able to meet a lot of other summer students and folks at UHN and enjoy some refreshments. So we hope that you'll come out. Okay, and with that, I'll jump in. I'm very excited for this workshop to welcome our speaker, and that is Dr. Roseanne Alyoung, who is the Executive Director of Research, Innovation, and Translation at Rotman Research Institute at Baycrest. And Roseanne will be presenting today and providing you some tips and tricks for how to craft compelling resumes and cover letters. So thank you so much, Roseanne, for joining, and we're excited to learn from you.
All right. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Jordan, for this lovely invitation. I'm going to share my screen and hopefully all will, we cannot share screen. Oh, now can I share screen maybe? Okay, here we go.
So sorry.
There we go. I jumped the gun. It's okay. Here we go. All right. Thumbs up from Jordan and Amanda that you can see my slides. Excellent. Thank you. So again, thank you all so much for attending today. I'm really excited to talk to you all about how to build a net resume and not an academic CV per se, but I'm also going to be talking about cover letters as well. All right, let's see if I have got this going. Here we go. So today I will be talking about what are you supposed to cover exactly in a cover letter? And then I'm going to move on and talk about a resume. So what is its purpose and how does it differ from a CV, which you may have heard of as well? And most importantly, what are some important do's and don'ts with regards to creating your cover letter and your resume? But to begin, let's talk about some initial considerations. So first off, really, who is the audience for your documents? So who is your target? Are you, what type of organization are you applying to? Are you applying to an academic position, an industry position, maybe a position at a nonprofit or charity? Do you know which department the position that you're applying for sits in? And another consideration is, do you know if they are using an online or what we call an application tracking system, or ATS, where you're submitting through a portal and it goes through an online screening process? Or are you applying to an individual where you feel fairly confident that a human will be looking at your resume and your cover letter straight away? I'm also going to suggest, if anybody has any questions as I'm going through, please feel free to post your questions in the chat. I'm happy to answer questions. So just build up those bank of questions as I make my way through. Okay, so most important, the next consideration is what, in terms of the position that you're applying for, what will you be doing? Do you have a good understanding of what are the tasks and functions associated with that position? Do you know who you might be working with or who you'll be dealing with as part of that position? Consideration number 3. How do your skills match the position that you're applying for? So can you identify your strengths and your transferable skills that you believe would be the best fit for the job that you're applying for? And perhaps even if some of the your skills are not the best fit, is there a way for you to reframe your job skills and work experiences in order to illustrate a better fit? And then consideration number 4, and this might not be necessarily for undergraduates, but more for any graduate students in the room. How much do you talk about your grad school activities or experience? What level of detail should you be including? And what are the relevance of grad school accomplishments to the job that you're applying? So for example, publications and conferences, the question is the job that you're applying for, would those be relevant? And if not relevant, how can you turn them into a strength? Okay, some initial considerations. So let's dive into a cover letter. So a cover letter is an application for a job. It is your opening dialogue with your prospective employer. So first, keep it short and simple. We recommend strongly, if you're typically applying for a non-academic position, that you keep it to 1-page maximum. You want to keep the employer's needs foremost in your mind. You want your prospective employer to read your cover letter and automatically think that person is wonderful and absolutely matches what I need for my position. You want to use the job posting for keywords and phrases. So you've identified a key job, a job posting, you're reading through the job posting. What you want to do is highlight some keywords and phrases and make sure that your cover letter clearly makes the case that you are going to meet and match those expectations. You want to highlight and sell your relevant skills and experiences because you're making the case that you are the best match for the position in question. So for example, if you are applying for a job in sales, then you want to look at any kind of experience that you have in customer relations, maybe sales, maybe marketing. But animal surgery, on the other hand, might not necessarily be the best fit in that particular instance. So you have to think about how you identify your skills and make the case for the match. Be original, be confident, be sincere, be engaging, but do not be arrogant nor self-centered. Because remember, not only are they looking for a new employee, they're looking for a colleague, they're looking for a teammate, they're looking for somebody that they would enjoy working with. So you want to present your best self in this cover letter to make the case that not only do you have the skills and experience, but that you are a great team player and someone they would want to work with. And then you want to make sure that you use professional letter formatting, and you want to make sure it is error-free. I will speak from personal experience. If I catch spelling and grammatical errors in any cover letters, I will put them aside immediately and I won't move on necessarily to the resume. A lot of people who are looking for employees will use any excuse not to review an application. So do not give them an excuse to put your application aside. If English is not your first language, then absolutely get a friend or a colleague, a family member to review your application in order to make sure that it is error-free as possible. Okay, next up. So this is a sample cover letter, and it's in response to a grant research officer posting. So an organization posted a job looking for somebody to work in their grants office to support researchers in applying for new grant opportunities. Dear Sir or Madam, as a recent PhD graduate, I'm writing to submit my application for a position at your organization. As a research trainee at Red Baron University, I was involved in the development of a genetically modified peanut that showed enhanced resistance to weather changes and natural pests. I optimized a number of molecular genetic techniques during the course of my studies, and it's currently being used in my former lab and that of a provincial collaborator. I was also a teaching assistant for 3 undergraduate courses in the Faculty of Agriculture. Thanks for your time. Hope to hear from you soon. All right, I need everybody in the audience to take a pad of paper. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to look at this letter, and I want you to jot down what you think is wrong with that particular letter. So just take some notes. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to maybe a minute and a half to actually take some notes down. So what do you think are some issues with this cover letter? Take some notes. All right. And remember all the considerations I laid out in my initial slides and before the previous slide. All right, I'm going to give you what I call the 8 minutes, 15 seconds. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, here we go. So I think this is working. All right, so if everybody, apologize for the little interlude, can open their mobile device and go to menti.com, menti.com. And once you're there, punch in the code 5552-8794, and then type in at least up to 5 things that you found wrong with the cover letter. And hit submit, most importantly. Yes, what kind of position? Yep, keywords and phrases, not connected with the job description, lack of relevant relevant skills. Yep, keep coming. Nice. Intro not engaging, didn't say how to fit the role. Skills not highlighted, didn't connect to the job. Yep, no skills mentioned, non-specific. Lack of grant experience, too wordy. Well done. Keep coming. Excellent. Here we go. So a lot of comments on the employer not given, aka the roles, it's not specific, no role listed, not enough detail. They didn't sell themselves, no skill examples, lack of grant experience, didn't connect to the job. The experience wasn't highlighted. Okay, excellent. Thank you, everybody. All right. Now let's see if I can transition from this slide without breaking my presentation. Here we go. Okay, here's the letter again. This is the ugly. namely template letter with no customization. And many of you commented on the fact that it was non-specific. There was no mention of any position or interest. And again, you caught that we didn't mention the role at all of what this individual is applying for. Oh, uh-oh. Are you not seeing slides? Oh, okay, hold on. Am I not sharing? Technical difficulties yet again. So sorry, folks. I got Menti to work and then it didn't actually do what I wanted it to do. Hold on. Amanda, I'm telling you.
Murphy's Law.
Murphy's Law indeed. Okay. Can people see my slides now? All right, here we go. Jordan, I'm largely depending on your editing skills after this. Thank you, everybody, for letting me know. I'm taking it in stride. I'm taking it in stride. All right. So, as I mentioned, the ugly. Template letter with no customization. No mention of any position or interest, frankly. Irrelevant graduate experience. But this is what the good would look like. All right. Dr. Charlie Brown, Director of Special Projects at the Peanut Research Institute, with a full address. Dear Dr. Brown, in response to the Pigpen Quarterly online posting of November 12th for the position of a grant research officer at the Peanut Research Institute, I would like to submit my application for consideration. As a recent doctoral graduate in agriculture, I learned firsthand the importance of institutional support for researchers and trainees in streamlining and enhancing the research enterprise. I am focused on providing meaningful practical support and facilitation to researchers in their activities, and I believe that my work experiences and qualifications are a good fit for the position. So we've tried to find the appropriate person to write to. We've clearly indicated what job you're applying for, and you've indicated why you're interested in the job. Remember, you have to show some interest. Now, as a PhD student at Red Baron University, I contributed to the creation, submission, and management of provincial and national grants. I authored portions of proposals. I know about and the knowledge translation sections in 2 grant applications. I was responsible for creating detailed grant budgets. And as part of the submission process, I was involved in the administrative aspects of the submission, like gathering CVs, acting as a liaison with the funding agency, helping industry and academic partners compose letters. And as part of the process, I was tasked with gathering milestone data, creating annual reports. With my wide breadth of experience in the grants process, I believe I could make a meaningful contribution to your organization. I'd very much like to discuss opportunities at your institute, would be available for a meeting. Please find attached my resume with additional information, and this is how you contact me. Okay, we have clearly indicated strengths and skills and fit, and we are available for an interview. Here's my documentation, and thank you. So everybody with me so far on the good and the bad with regards to a cover letter? Can I see some thumbs up from the audience? Oh, even remotely. Yes. Thank you, Jordan. Yes. Thank you, Polly. Thank you, Devin. Thank you, Matthew. Everybody with me. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Dimitri, in the chat. Here we go. So let's move on to resumes. What are their purpose? How do they differ from CVs? What are important do's and don'ts? And what are some examples? So what I've put here is a comparison table. And what you see on the left is what we call the traditional academic CV. And these are typically documents that are used to apply for faculty positions or generally large academic-based positions at a university or a research institute. On the right is what you see typically, which is for industry or other in terms of a resume. Now, academic CVs are typically designed for human review. They go to search committees, faculty committees for review. Most organizations of a particular size often use what we call an application tracking system, which is an online portal where you upload your documents and it goes into an automated system, which often scores and reviews and scores your resume. Now, For smaller organizations like startups or maybe some smaller charities, they may have a human review it, but you should be prepared for both. On an academic CV, you typically are focused on highlighting your research, teaching experience, and accomplishments. There is absolutely an emphasis on grants and awards that you've received. On the right, with regards to industry or other, you're highlighting position-related content. So coming back to my first slide, know what the position that you're applying for, what does that position involve, and how do your skills need to be matched to that. There's also an emphasis on transferable skills and techniques. And I'm going to talk a little bit later on about what is a transferable skill and how to highlight your skills. For academic CVs, you typically include a comprehensive list of your publications and presentations. On an industry or other resume, often you typically pick a selection, if any, that are relevant to the position. And often you're positioning those presentations and publications in the context of your communication skills, your oral presentation skills, whereas in an academic CV, that's more evidence of your research productivity and your output. So slightly different objective in putting that into the different documents. Everybody with me so far? Thumbs up, happy emojis? Yes, all right, thank you everybody. Excellent, thank you. All right. Now, in terms of references in the academic CV, absolutely yes, they are looking for references. In industry or other, typically, we don't provide it when you submit with regards to your resume. It's often provided upon request at or after the interview, if you are fortunate to get an interview. On an academic CV, there's typically no hard limit in terms of page. So I've seen CVs that are 15, 20, 25 pages in length, depending on the experience and seniority of the individual. For a resume, 1 to 2 pages max. Format. Academic CVs are often online, email attachments, and sometimes it'll go through the application tracking system, but more often than not, a human will be looking at it. For industry or other, it's often through an online system, again, with an organization of a particular size, and often an HR or human resources department or an algorithm will sort through all of the applications, sometimes give each application a score, and only certain applications are then moved on for human review. So you want to make sure that your application is accepted by that online algorithm and makes the first pass. So that's why it's really important that your cover letter and your resume uses the keywords in the job posting so that it actually makes that first pass through and ensures that a human looks at it. Okay. Here we go. So in terms of resume content, some important do's and don'ts. Do. Convey who you are and what you can offer in 20 seconds or less. I will be honest, I have reviewed hundreds of resumes in my time, and most times I give a resume about 15 seconds of my attention. So I will take a very lasered focus in reviewing a resume, and you need to catch me in 20 seconds or I moved on. You want to ensure that you have no significant time gaps. So you want to be fulsome in your catalog of your experience. Now, if individuals have, let's say, a leave involved in their career or a parental leave or other situations, that's okay. You can absolutely accommodate that. But you want to make sure that when you're preparing your resume, you're as exhaustive as possible. You're very clear about, if there are certain leaves involved, but you just want to make sure as optimally as possible that you don't have significant time gaps. You want to be concise but specific. You want to highlight your best skills, your abilities, your accomplishments, most importantly, that are relevant to the position. And you want to use action verbs and measurable evidence. And I'm going to show you some examples of what that looks like. And again, keywords from the job posting. And most importantly, you want to be positive and honest. You do not want to be caught in a lie on your resume. If that is caught by a prospective employer, I will say that will, at least in my estimation, automatically disqualify you from consideration. Don't describe everything you have ever done in your lifetime on your resume. That's very important. You have to be strategic in what you include. You will try to avoid salary until the interview. What I have seen in the past is that individuals will put salary into their application in some fashion. And then what happens is if that salary that you've put in is beyond the budget of the position, you will not be reviewed more often than not. Now, if after the interview, there is a mismatch between your salary and your expectations and your needs, of course, that, is an absolute consideration in taking a position. But you want to at least be seen and be considered for the job. If, however, you put a salary number into your application that gives a hiring manager pause, you might not even get to the interview, and you won't have the choice of making a decision about whether you'd be willing to maybe give a little on the salary because of the experience it affords you. So again, just be cautious about how you deal with salary. Again, do not lie, full stop. You do not want to be caught in a lie. You don't have to offer every negative piece of information about yourself, but you can absolutely talk about some challenges in an interview, okay? And in the North American context, we typically do not include race, religion, or membership information on a resume. So there is no onus to give age, there's no onus to give date of birth on your resume and that type of information. The only thing we typically in North America are looking for is to make sure that you are eligible to work in Canada. Everybody with me so far? Okay. Format, dues, 1 to 2 page max, pointed bullet form is acceptable. But you want to, again, still make sure it's grammatically correct, that you are relaying good information. You want to put your most relevant qualifications listed near the top. So try reverse chronological order, whether that be your education, work experience, or your awards. Again, you've got about 15 to 20 seconds of my eyeballs on your application. So don't hide the good stuff at the very end, because I might not reach there. So you want to front load all of the things you feel it's important for me to see. You want to make sure that you have contact information on your resume, because what happens if I want to get in touch with you and I can't find you? Often people will not do the extra hunt to find you. So make it really easy for them to get a hold of you afterwards. And references are provided on a separate sheet only if requested. Don'ts. Avoid acronyms. I know, I am guilty of this. In every single research job I've ever had, there's been tons of acronyms, whether it be mRNA and RCTs and fMRIs and MEGs and EEGs and TMSs. Try not to use those, okay? You want to avoid font smaller than 10 point and avoid illegible font. So as much as back in the old days where we expanded, we shrunk the margins and reduced the font to like 5 font to fit everything on one page, please don't do that. Please don't do that. That will be frowned upon. Now, in terms of style, do's. You want to use active voice. I managed something. I conducted a study. You want to use categories, white space, highlighting, capitalizing, underlining to organize and emphasize. Now, you don't want to use all of it all the time everywhere. You want to use it strategically, but these are types of tools that you can use to clearly guide your reader through your resume appropriately. You'd like to use business-like language, but let your personality show. Use the language of the industry. And you can use sentence fragments for brevity. That comes back to bullet points. But whatever style you use, you need to be consistent throughout your resume. So please don't start with bullets and then turn into full-time sentences and then turn into paragraphs by the end. So pick a style and stay consistent throughout. And again, error-free. The minute I start catching spelling errors, grammatical errors, again, I'll put it aside, because in my mind, that could be indicative of a lack of attention to detail. So again, do not give prospective employers any excuse to put your application aside. Don'ts. Try to avoid passive voice. So again, I managed, as opposed to I assisted with something to manage. Please avoid pronouns, articles, and jargon. Avoid slang and colloquialisms. So remember, this is a job application. This is not a text or a DM on your computer. This is a job application. Okay, common resume mistakes. Using too many words. You want to be concise, but thorough. So you definitely want to keep reworking and rewording your resume to be as concise as possible, but still informative. Including personal information. Again, in North American settings, we typically do not include marital status, date of birth, citizenship, gender, a photograph, or your native country. Now, I cannot speak to other jurisdictions. There are other jurisdictions where this is part of their regular practice, but here in North America, we typically do not include these types of items in a resume. Improperly attributing pre-published papers. That is something that often is an issue with regards to research or academic positions, even if it's a research assistant. You want to be very clear that what your contributions are was appropriate and appropriately represented in your resume. And again, try not to be too creative with format and style. I know that some people love those cursive style fonts in MS Word. Please don't use that. You want to think about this as like as AODA compliant for an individual who might have whatever visual or interpretive needs as possible. Oh, Laura, I will absolutely answer your question in the Q&A, but keep it coming. Okay. So the 3 T's for a job posting: you want to target, you want to tailor, and you want to translate. Those are my big 3 T's. So, for example, a lot of times in a resume, I will see this bullet in their work experience. I conducted a neuroimaging study of episodic memory in aging adults at risk for Alzheimer's disease. Now, in a resume that's going to a company or maybe a charity, they may not fully have experience with what running a study looks like. They may not be familiar with what neuroimaging is. They might know about Alzheimer's disease. So that is could potentially be quite amorphous and a little mysterious for a job, a hiring manager. You do not want to be mysterious. You want to be very clear and upfront about your fit. So I always encourage people to do is, yes, you can break that bullet down, but then you want to dive deep into what that actually involved. So for example, doing that study might have involved developing and synthesizing literature reviews of existing research. It might have involved designing a new research method to test memory. It might have involved managing or working with an interdisciplinary team to develop that memory assessment, like working with graduate students or postdoctoral fellows or a lab manager, for example. You might have, in the course of this study, contacted, screened, and recruited, in this particular instance, 300 older adults living with memory problems. You want to be tangible. If you have a really big number that looks impressive, include that. Because remember, I said active and tangible evidence. This could have potentially involved coordinating and supervising the collection of clinical and research data from patients and their caregivers. So again, 1 bullet turned into 5 bullets, potentially, demonstrating your skills, demonstrating your experience. Everybody with me so far? I keep on going. It could have also involved administrative study duties. Like you might have been responsible for, reimbursing participants. You might have been tracking different metrics. You could have supervised volunteers or students or research assistants. You might have done statistical analyses and prepared reports using software. And you could have provided editorial support for scientific manuscripts, posters, and presentations. Now, I know I told you brief, and I know I told you being as thorough and evidence-based as possible. This is where you have to spend some time listing all of this. So list all the activities that you did, but then afterwards go through and strategically identify what you want to include in your resume. Okay. So another common thing that I often see is, for example, and this might be more for graduate students than undergrads, but either way, I think it serves a relevant example, that you served as a teaching assistant for 3 terms at U of T. Now, that could have involved you could expand on that and be more specific, where you developed and delivered 10 lectures to 500 students in the Department of Psychology. You evaluated and graded term papers and provided student feedback. You could have explained and reviewed course concepts and answered student questions. And if you were evaluated, that's important as well to be actually included. So received a 4.8 out of 5 rating, with 5 being excellent based on student feedback, 400 feedback forms. Now, I'm going to translate that maybe if you're not a graduate student. Like, let's say, for example, you were a camp counselor, or you worked in, babysitting, or in a daycare. You can actually similarly do this in terms of supporting children. Let's say, for example, as a camp counselor, you got feedback from, your hiring manager or what have you. These are where performance reviews can also come into play. So it doesn't only have to be for graduate school. It could also be for other positions as well. Next, for many of you, you have engaged in service. And what do I mean by service? I often mean like volunteering, participating in, potential organizations as an undergrad, whether that be societies, whether that be clubs, whether that be outside charities. And you can honestly turn that service into a lot of really good leadership and really good experience. So for example, you could say as an undergrad, you represented, psychology students at university council meetings. You could have coordinated campus-wide events for, stakeholders, new and existing students, for faculty, for the community, whether that be like a recruitment day, an outreach day. If for any of these different activities you manage money, that's really important. So a lot of undergraduate clubs, for example, does have an operating budget. And if you were responsible, let's say, for an annual budget of $20,000, whether that be developing the budget, spending the money, keeping track of that money, producing finance reports, that's really valuable administrative and financial experience that any employer would love to know. And if you worked with a lot of different groups, whether that be like working with the engineering society or the neuroscience or the psychology group, these are really important soft transferable skills that employers would be really interested in hearing about. Okay. So, Amanda, here we go. I'm going to try it again. Let's see if it works this time, or I've got to break my PowerPoint again. Okay. So if everybody can go back to menti.com, menti.com, type in the same code 5552-8794, then can you describe to me what are some of your transferable skills, or what you think are your transferable skills? Time management, love it. Verbal communication, leadership. Okay, there's got to be more than 2 about you. Okay, communicator, excellent. Teamwork, love it. Admin skills, collaboration. I like who is very friendly and cool. I appreciate that. Communications definitely coming out. Project management, multitasking, organization. Excellent. Keep it coming, folks. Data analysis, I love that. Progress tracking, I love that. Are we petering out? I feel strongly that this group has more skills than this. Are there more skills? Are there more skills? Excellent. Document and policy writing. Okay. Time management is definitely emerging. Technical skills, I like that. Budget creation, love the person who worked on a budget. Okay. All right. I'm not going to belabor the point, but so let's see. So what are your transferable skills? This is a table that I'm happy to share, and Amanda and Jordan can share afterwards. But sometimes what we really want to focus on is less knowledge expertise. So many people will, for example, describe in their resume animal surgery or cell culture and assays, genomic analyses. Oops, sorry. Okay. Neuropsychological assessments, multivariate statistics. Now, if you are not applying for a very core research job, these particular skills might not be a good fit. So let's say you're applying for Google, animal surgery may not be the best fit for a job application to Google or Facebook or Meta, as the case might be. Now, in how we convert that into technical skills would be research design, information gathering and synthesis, rapid learning, critical thinking, high-level writing and editing, strategic thinking and visioning, presentation skills, problem defining and solving, quantitative skills. This is often the language that a lot of employers will generally understand. Now, you do need to pair this with evidence, because one of the things is you just saying, I am a rapid learner with no evidence doesn't differentiate or make you stand out relative to other applicants. But if you say you are a rapid learner and provide a tangible example of that rapid learning, that's what sets that apart. So you don't just include all of these words in a resume without any backing of examples and evidence. You need that second part. Now, management skills can also be project management, time management, which I saw, both of which I saw in the word cloud, attention to detail, admin and budgetary skills. Love the person who said that they did a budget. Evaluation skills, organization skills, even supervision skills. So as a, let's say a camp counselor, you oversaw and managed volunteers. That's really great to put into a resume. And then what we term soft skills. So that could be project stamina. You saw a project through end to end. You worked on complex, ambiguous, or uncertain projects. Employers love to see someone who's adaptable, who can actually be nimble and meet a project as it changes, as it evolves, and you are able to evolve with it. Teamwork skills, leadership skills, both of which I saw in the word cloud. So you're already thinking in this space. Motivational skills, the idea that you motivate a team to actually work through an entire project and get to the end, that is huge in the workforce. That you have initiative, that you have discipline, that you can work with different groups of people. These are all the types of skills that employers really love to see. But again, when paired with evidence. So you just can't say that you have initiative. You've got to say that you have initiative and then give me evidence of that. Okay. Thank you for all of your attention. And thank you for bearing with me as my mentee broke my presentation. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to open the floor to questions. I think there are some questions in the chat, so I'm just going to go to the chat just to make sure that I am capturing that. But in the meantime, please keep those questions coming and I'm happy to answer that. Okay, can we use the Canva resume templates or should we use the basic format on Word? In my estimation, I think you're fine using whatever template that you feel comfortable with, whether it's from Canva or MS Word, as long as it meets all the format dues, content dues, stylistic dues. So again, you don't want to be overly creative because some people, in my mind, are focusing more on, the image or the design as opposed to clarity of communication. So I think my big emphasis is to make sure that your content is clear, that is clearly communicated, that's easy to read, it's easy to comprehend. Whether your template comes from Canva or MS Word, as long as those kinds of tenets are still adhered to, I'm comfortable with that. I see Amanda nodding, so I'm feeling good that she's also on the same page as I. Okay, if we have a relevant experience section in our resume with 3 to 5 jobs, for how many jobs should we dive deep considering the page limit? So I would say you want to pick the jobs that are the most relevant to the position that you're applying to and expand on those, because those are the best fit and match for the position that you're applying for. So based on that strategic decision, that would lead you to how much space you're allocating to those jobs that you expand on versus the one that it's more about being brief about. Okay. If there's a gap on the resume related to health, sick leave, moving cities, getting married, how would you include it and what would you say? What if the job experience you have doesn't relate to the job posting, but if you remove it, there's a gap on your resume, what's the correct way to go about it? Okay. So in terms of the job experience, I wouldn't remove it. I would just put it with just minimal description and focus in on other positions. So my apologies if it was confusing. I wouldn't remove a job per se. I would just not write half a page about that particular job. So that's number one. I see Amanda nodding. I like that as well. Okay. With regards to health, sick leave, moving cities, getting married, there's no onus on for you to explain personal circumstances within a job application or resume. I think what we will, what I do advise people to do is obviously have a thorough job, chronological order back from most recent to most historical. Now, if there's a very large gap with regards to, let's say, taking time away to have a family or potentially getting married, you might, and Amanda, I might ask for your guidance here as well, might just say, there was a personal leave involved, and then, just to fill that gap. Right? As opposed to leaving a person to wonder what happened. You don't have to give, your personal circumstances, but you could just say that you were on a personal leave. Amanda, would you concur in that space?
I agree. I think you can also do that briefly in the cover letter if you want to put it there. Instead, just say, you may notice there's a gap and that was because I was on leave, period. And you definitely don't have to explain that, but people do often wonder. So giving some kind of making it up front that that there's a gap, but it wasn't a big deal, I think is useful.
Okay, thank you. Great idea about the cover letter, 100%. Okay, sorry, I'm just going back through. Any thoughts readdressing cover letter, dear sir or madam, feels outdated? I come from a certain age. I apologize. This might be making me realize I'm a dinosaur. I think, to whom it may concern is also another way that you could look at that. But I typically advise trying to find who the hiring manager is. You could also say to the hiring manager of the department that you're actually applying to as well, which demonstrates that you tried to find the person. You might not have been successful, but you know which department, as opposed to putting nothing, because that never goes over well. Because there's nothing worse than just putting copying the same letter and throwing it to 200 organizations and not customizing it. Because as a hiring manager, I can tell you that I absolutely abhor those generic, those generic letters that aren't even addressed to Baycrest, are not even addressed to the Research Institute. I can assume that you've sent that same letter to 4,000 people, and it really doesn't demonstrate that you're interested in working for Baycrest, for example. Okay. Do you have any advice for applying to jobs that appear outside of your field, such as being in the science field, but applying for consulting? Oh, interesting. Okay. So a couple of ways that you can go about it. One, depending on how far outside the field you are, you might want to take a look at the experiences that people are in the consulting area have, and think about, over the next couple of summers, building up some experience, whether it be, shadowing, volunteering, doing internships to build some of that experience. The other piece that you could also look at is, again, looking at your experience and reframing it for what might be appealing into a consulting job. So looking at client service, for example, customer service, for example, critical thinking or analysis skills. So think about how that looks and how that might be reframed for a consultancy job. And when paired with getting a little more exposure. You could also start maybe doing informational interviews with people who are in the consultancy space, so you can get a better sense of what is the language and what are the types of activities they do, so that you can better reframe your experience for a consultancy job. So a couple of tips there. Okay. Would you prefer a cover letter with bullets listing out the critical skills required for the job and 2 to 3 sub-bullets describing your relevant experience on them? Personally, I prefer a cover letter to be actual prose. I only recommend bullets for the resume per se. Sometimes I really find the best cover letters are ones where I actually get a sense of the writing skill of the applicant, which is it can stand out to me, actually, to be perfectly honest. When there's a really well-written, great narrative, strong prose, that's a winner for me. I actually am really curious to look at the resume after that. And that's where you can go to bullets and brevity. But I always treat a cover letter as like you're having a conversation with your prospective employer. So you want that conversation and that writing skill to emerge. So personally, I wouldn't go the bullet route in the cover letter. Okay. Related to the gap in experience, do dates of employment have to be listed for each job, or can they just be left out? Oh, interesting. I tend to like actually seeing, you don't have to go precise day to day, for example, like January 1st to September 30th. But sometimes what can happen is years are helpful, because sometimes people look at how long people have been at a particular employer, which can actually be really helpful in terms of, depth of experience, the amount of skill that they would have acquired. So let's say, for example, you did a 4-month internship at a place. You could just say January to April of 2022, you were on an internship, for example. Let's say you spent 3 years at as a camp counselor. You could say 2018 to 2021, you were a camp counselor at this particular organization. I do like to see, because sometimes what can be, as a hiring manager, a red flag is if people are not at a place long enough. So they've had a series of jobs, 1 month here, 1 month here, 1 month here, 1 month here, 1 month here. As an employer, you're sort of okay, that might be a little bit of a red flag. And so if you can alleviate the concern of anybody, just to say I've spent 4 months here, I've spent 6 months as an internship, I spent 2 years as, in client service, that can actually give quite a bit of good information to a prospective employer. And do not be afraid of those 4 months, because people understand as an undergrad, you're probably doing co-op placements and interns. So that's not a bad thing. A knowledgeable hiring manager will know that most of those interns are 4 months, or internships are 4 months. So that does not work against you. Whoa, I love that all of you have questions. Here we go. How do we format our experiences for a position when we have no experience or much knowledge, but a strong interest as a junior undergrad? For example, applying to wet lab positions with only clinical experiences. Oh, amazing question there. I think one of the things that I did when I was in that position was really talking about your critical, even if you, let's say, have not held a pipette gun, have not done cell assays, it's really sometimes about attention to detail, organizational skills, stamina, dedication, seeing a project through, demonstrating that you have ability to learn, that you are able to work in a team environment, and that express a genuine interest in learning these new skills. And these are the existing skills that you can bring to that. Because as an employer, I'm always interested in a person who is a great teammate, shows a capability of learning and interested in learning. And I'm happy to help that person get to where they need to go. So I think in that sense, you want to build on your existing strengths, Definitely demonstrate that you're interested in learning, willing to learn, and willing to do the work, and then help your prospective supervisor make that leap into the wet lab. Okay, one of the questions usually on the applications online is about the salary. What's the best way to answer it? Okay, two things that I would say. One, do your market research. A lot of times you can go to a lot of different platforms like Glassdoor or Indeed, and they will have ranges posted in some of those positions so you can get a better sense of the range. Second, you can also, for example, look at HR sites. So certain companies for postings that they list actually have ranges by virtue of their organization that they have to put into the job posting. So you'll have a better idea. Where you do not want to be is, let's say you apply for a position where typically the hiring range is, let's say, like $50,000 to $60,000, and then you go in and say, I want $100,000. That is where the mismatch for a hiring manager will be like, there's no way I can meet that expectation, and you likely will not get a call for an interview. So you want to do your market research. You also would probably try to give ranges, right? So don't fix into like, I'm only coming in for $100,000. Like, give the hiring manager some flexibility. So kind of go like maybe $80,000 to $100,000 or $50,000 to $70,000. So you give some play for the manager to be like, okay, they might be open to a certain range depending on what funds are available. Everybody with me? Okay. Woo, all right, here we go. Right, an EDI consideration, absolutely. I think it's really important, for example, that an equity, diversity, and inclusion and accessibility lens is considered when you're both as a prospective employer, but also as an applicant. If you have experience, including that particular experience, whether it be in a camp counseling, volunteering, service, that absolutely is an asset that you can absolutely include in an application, 100%. Okay. If you're volunteering for a professor, writing reports, assisting in research proposal, conducting trainings, but you have no official position, how would you write it in the resume? Do you claim to be a volunteer research assistant? Fascinating. Okay. I think one of the things you could do is maybe speak to your professor supervisor and actually solicit their direct feedback into how they would classify your role in their lab. Because again, I think you want to be as honest and transparent as possible. And I think what you'd love to do is actually get that feedback from your supervisor. If that supervisor says, good, I would list you as a volunteer, okay, you can say a volunteer, but then you can, in the sub-bullets under the volunteer position, elaborate a little on what are the activities, achievements, and skills that you developed and displayed during that volunteer position. Does that help? Okay. We are at 3:03. Holy wow. Okay, fantastic questions. I'm going to turn it back over to Amanda and Jordan. I'm happy to stay for an extra couple of minutes, but thank you all so much for all of your amazing questions, for your attention and your engagement. Back over to you, Amanda.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Roseanne. And thank you to everyone for your engagement. Thank you to Roseanne for such lovely tips. I think a lot of people are going to go and put those into implementation right away, which is fantastic. We'll send out the recording to everyone tomorrow. So if you want to review the information again at a later time, you'll have availability and capability to do that. So thank you, Roseanne, again, and thank you everybody for coming. Somebody's asking about the attendance. We will put it in the chat now.